Hi there, I'm Mark Isero, and this is the Highlighter Podcast. Hey everybody, and welcome to the 24th episode of the Highlighter Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Isero, and happy 2018 to all of you, and I especially want to welcome all the new listeners. The Highlighter is a podcast, but it's also a newsletter featuring the best articles on race, education, and culture. And this podcast is an opportunity to meet and talk to some great people who are doing good work, and also to talk about some great writing. And this week is no different. I have Omar Bryan on the show, and he's an excellent educator, a former teacher, now a vice principal at Impact Academy, middle grades in Hayward. And he's going to talk about the article Generation Screwed by Michael Hobbes, which appeared in the Highlighter number 124. I'm really excited to talk to Omar, and I think that you're going to totally like this interview. So let's get right to it. Hey, Omar.
Hi, Mark.
Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I am too. First, can you let everybody know a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I can. My name is Omar Bryan. I am originally and was born in Jamaica, Jamaica, West Indies. And I emigrated here to the United States roughly around the time when I just turned about 8. And I grew up in New York, Long Island, New York. Notice I don't have a Long Island accent. I don't say Long Island. A lot of folks say that a lot, but they always wondered about that. I don't have my Jamaican accent. I don't have a New York accent. I just kind of developed my own way of being able to talk, enunciate, I guess. And there is where I grew up with my older brother, O'Neill, my mom, Maxine, and my dad, Garth. And during that time, I developed lots of wonderful friendships and found this fondness for drawing and doing art. When I did that, it took me all the way through high school where I said, I really want to become an animator. I really want to do this. And I had a art teacher along the way that really pushed me to take classes outside of school, to focus on drawing from life. And that was one of her things that she really pushed me to do. So rather than just drawing cartoons, I started to have this fond appreciation for looking at the world in a different way and really capturing that on paper or through paint. And that's when I decided to go to art school. When I did go to art school, I just found myself immersed in like this wonderful environment of artists who wanted to do so many different things: graphic design, photography, own their own studios. And that's where I really felt at home. So that's kind of a little bit about me, and I'm still an artist at heart, but I'm also an educator.
Yeah, you are. How did you make the switch, and how did that happen?
That happened when I was in college. I never thought about being an educator. I was always a really shy person, so for me, I'm thinking about being a teacher. You're up front all the time. You're on that grand stage, and that was scary to me. I never thought about doing that. I think it first started when, after my first year in college, I went back to my high school and visited my high school art teacher. I brought my portfolio, showed some of the work that I did in my first year, and she asked me to address her class. It was really nerve-wracking, really scary. However, I rose to the challenge, and I shared my work with other students who were juniors and seniors who were thinking about doing art. Even actually connected with a couple students who came out to visit my school, and I showed them around. And that was it felt great to me to be able to offer that to somebody. My high school art teacher did that for me, helped me kind of recognize that I can have an opportunity to pursue art as a career. And now I had this opportunity to support folks in their journey. So when I heard her say that, have you ever thought about being an educator? I said, not really, but it could happen. It kept happening as I became a resident assistant, started supporting students that were transitioning from high school to college. And then this opportunity came to become a part of the very first dual degree program at my school, where I can continue on in my regular studies, which was illustration and animation. And then I could get my master's in art education. So I said, okay, let's give it a try. Let me apply for the scholarship, because I didn't have the means or the finances to be able to pay for that. And I got the scholarship. So I was like, okay, I got the scholarship. Here's this program. It's new. My advisor really pushed me to try it out, and I went on from there. And it was a wonderful experience for me. I got to learn a lot more about how the educational system came into being. I got to learn a lot more about how I learn and how others learn. It gave me an opportunity to take something that I really loved, which is supporting others, and turn it into a career. I always saw myself being an animator later on down the line, but that for me was more like a self thing. Like, this is for me, this is what I want. And I think going into education allowed for me to be a little bit more selfless and think about what I can do to support others.
Mm-hmm. And specifically, before you became a school leader, you taught high school. Was it always high school before moving to middle school?
That was always on my mind, mainly because it was when I was in high school that I started to develop this appreciation for art, and I felt like that was where I could support kids and help them get into college. That was the idea, that help students really recognize their talents in art and be able to go pursue that, just like my high school art teacher did for me. But while I was studying, there was a gentleman in my program. His name was Joseph Zaremba. He was a middle school teacher, and he taught art. We became really close, just through class, but also he became my cooperating teacher and basically became my mentor as well. So I did my student teaching at his school, which was Expeditionary Learning School in Massachusetts. And while working with him, something struck me where he said, it's middle school where you really get to grab their attention, and really push their thinking and help them recognize the beauty of art. Not just that, but just also their place in the world. And from then on, it really became this mission for me to really seek out a art teaching position where I can do or work with middle schoolers. But when I moved all the way from New York to California, that didn't really happen. There wasn't really an art teaching position for a new teacher from another state in any school. And I ended up starting out as a semi-administrator at a school, at a high school here in Richmond, California. And when I did that for a couple years, I said, I really want to get into the classroom again. And when I got my first teaching job, it was here at Impact, and it was teaching high school. So I just kind of followed along that path, and I did that for about 7 years here at Impact, Impact Academy, that is. And once I finished those 7 years and the opportunity to open a middle school came up, I was thinking about that whole state of being when I was in college, and what was said to me by my mentor. I said to myself, this is an opportunity for me to really, really grab them, really support them, nurture them, and help them get to that mission that we've had for a long time, which is to see all students, graduate from high school, enter and succeed in college.
Yeah, it's really interesting, your background, and also sort of how you approached, and also probably still approach, the idea of education through art. Mm-hmm. We've had a couple art teachers so far on the show. Do you feel like your background as an art teacher informs even how you are as a school leader? I feel like when I visited your classroom, there's this simultaneous thing going on where you're really taking care of the kids, really being professional and pushing them, seeing that art is about both self-expression as well as seeing the world, but also getting nitty-gritty on some of these tools that are quite important and I could say maybe marketable for students' futures. Which of those aspects do you feel are probably at the heart of it for you in being an art teacher?
That's a great question. First and foremost, I want to say that as as an artist, I think I approach life just with a very I look at things differently. I tend to analyze things a lot, almost as if I'm using the design process when I look at scenarios. I try to be very detail oriented. You can see that in my artwork, as well as in my professional life in terms of how I approach different tasks or situations. I think when I was teaching on the high school level, I was very in tune with what kids were doing at the time, specifically music that they were into, the clothes that they were into, just pop culture in general. And I was still young, so I whatever it is that kids were thinking about, I would go and do some research and think about how can I bring this back into their lives, because I knew for myself what helped me stay focused when I was in school that it was relevant to me, that the things that the teachers were talking about really connected with me, and it was me being able to do art in projects that I had, or me being able to really tap into the skills that I had that kept me focused and wanting to learn more. So as an art teacher, I thought about where are these students sitting in my classroom? What are they really interested in? But I also recognize that being able to do art is lots of self-discipline and lots of structure. And oftentimes students come into an art class and say, oh, I can't draw. And I did the same speech over and over and over again. It's not about just drawing, right? There's so many different ways that you can express yourself. I would always say that you can always express yourself through art. There's various media that you can use. You just need to find the one that helps you be able to do that. Yes, we will learn how to draw. Yes, we'll learn how to paint. Yes, we'll learn how to do arts and crafts, or all these different types of creating art. However, part of it is the discipline, the practice and learning. So the structure is what really came into play for me. And my stance with students has always been that don't tell me, show me. My teacher would always ask me, oh, what is it that you're doing right over here? And then I would try to explain it, and then she'd say, don't tell me, show me. So it's through the actions or through the things that you're trying to convey. That's how people really get or understand what it is that you're trying to communicate. So a lot of the times, students in my class will get frustrated, and I'd be like, yeah, art is not an easy thing to do. And it takes practice. And I think with that discipline, it helps kids when they look in other classes, whether it be math or English, that you have to do that continual practice and learning how to do something before you get better.
Yeah. So. And I feel like in your class, as well as what you're doing now, is in your class, you always had students follow their passions and try to get more independent, I feel, in their expression. And I feel like that's how I've seen you also at the middle grades, where I just see you with students, and there's always a very deep respect, mutual deep respect, but also I feel like you're always trying to not answer the students' questions. You're still trying to be helpful, but you're not trying to have them be dependent on you. Is that something that is a conscious decision of how you are an educator, or is it just sort of a natural thing?
When I was student teaching, I was working with middle schoolers, and I had the opportunity to support them in their development as artists. And I had a sketchbook that I always had with me all the time. And this became a natural practice for me, where a student would say, oh, I don't know how to draw this one thing. I don't know how to do this one thing. And I would say, oh, I think I have some experience with this. Let's see. And I would, do a little sketch, and they're like, yep, that's it. And then I would say, okay, and I'll close the book and I'll walk away. In that moment, what they were looking for was for me to leave that page with them so that they can copy it, or so that they can do something to make it look just like that. And what I would say to them is that's my work. That's my drawing that I did. I'm just showing you how I approach it. I want to see how you're going to approach it. What is the vision that you have? I want you to put it down on that paper. And that's something that I would continue to do as I, moved from middle school to high school, is to help kids find their own vision and actually bring that into being, give life to that. Otherwise, we're just going to sit there and continue to like copy each other, and we're not going to have any sense of self. So I really push them to think about that. What is it that you want to communicate?
Mm-hmm. It's almost like you stop time though with students. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they say that the best people are the folks who you feel when you're in their presence, that you're the only person. I feel like when I get to observe you, that you sort of stopped, even though you're very busy and being at a school and being a school leader, there's so many. How are you able to make that happen? Where a student comes in, you're already working on something else. Maybe it's a tough day. And then all of a sudden, that student is the only person in this world.
Yeah. You know, when I stop and like really think about it, one of the things that I value most is the relationships that I have with my students. I never tell them no in that moment. They'll ask a question, and sometimes I'll ask more follow-up questions. And to some, that might feel more of like a frustrating thing to do, but what I'm generally trying to show them is that I'm really interested in getting to know them and really I'm trying to understand what is it that they are lacking in terms of confidence. So I will take that time to work with them, and they'll know that when they come to me, what they're going to get. They know that I'm going to be there to push them and really support them and help them find something that they never thought was there. So oftentimes I make it a point to go and sit with the students that I know are going to have a rough start. Sometimes I make strategic moves in terms of who sits at the front of the room with me or who gets to sit with their friends. Even in the art class, I try to have some kind of structure where kids know that, like, yeah, you have the freedom to create, and I'm going to create the conditions to help you bring that success for yourself. I remember when I was in high school and I was taking art class, being able to sit and talk with my friends about the things that we were generally interested in got me to really stay focused and be able to do the work that I'm trying to do. So I did a lot of listening. Oftentimes, I would just sit there on my stool and observe the conversations that are happening, and then I would find some way to kind of dive into those conversations and say, yeah, that sounds really cool. I heard you guys talking about this thing. How can you take what you just said and communicate that in your work? I think time for me is giving kids time to actually think about what it is they're trying to do, give them time to talk about it with their peers, and then also give them time to actually have quiet time to actually make sense. So we would have quiet time. I had different signs around the room that said studio work time. Like, let's get into the frame of mind of like, I need to like just sit with this work, even if it's for 10-15 minutes and I have a blank paper. Like, I just need to sit in that moment, in that silence, to really figure out the work. And then there's collaborative work time, where I get to actually talk to my peers, get critiques on my work, get some feedback. So I also created the conditions for those types of things.
Sounds good. Ready to switch gears?
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, first, before we get into the article, I want to ask why you chose to be a subscriber of The Highlighter.
Yes. I loved working with you when I was a digital media arts teacher. You came in and observed my classroom, and a lot of the things that you're bringing up now as questions, it's what you observed happening in my class. And you helped me also think about literacy and how I can bring that into an art classroom. That was really important to me, and it's something that's stuck. And in anything that I do now, even as an administrator here at the middle school, I really wanted to push that for our students. Make sure that our students are coming in reading at grade level, and that they feel ready and prepared for high school. So I think for me, that was one of the most important things of jumping into the highlighter. It was an opportunity for me to continue to learn, to become better evaluator of sources. A lot of the sources that are there come from various websites. Sometimes we get stuck with just the one resource that we know. So it allows for me to be able to like read from different perspectives. But it's also important to also think about some of the things that are prevalent in our society. And there's lots of things about race that are coming up right now. And the article really helps to push my thinking around that. Our school's been talking about equity more recently, and delving into that area of courageous conversations. And I think the highlighter provides an opportunity for me to develop my own voice where that is concerned. I've always taken a back seat in terms of like listening when it comes to conversations about race. And as I read more articles and look at the various opinions that are out there, I'm starting to develop my own. So I think it's providing me with lots of wonderful resources to think about.
Yeah. And maybe someday there's going to be a student highlighter.
Yeah, it's something that I'm really pushing for, and I'm hoping that we can collaborate on that.
It's pretty exciting. Yeah, we'll talk about that in this new year.
All right.
Let's get to the lead article. So this is an article by Michael Hobbes, and it's either called Generation Screwed or Millennials Are Screwed. Seemingly what his attitude is.
Yeah.
Let's dive in. So you got to read it, and did you have any first impressions?
Well, my first impression was, wow, they went there. They went the 8-bit animation and very hands-on with the website, which is something that, just like jumped out at me right away. I don't know if it's like a millennial thing. I read in one of the messages or comments on the Huffington Post, someone was like, oh, millennials need that kind of distracting bright light stuff to get them to finish reading an article. And I chuckled a little bit because that was my first impression. I was like, "Whoa, this is really cool. Let me keep going."
I totally thought it was great too. But like, do you know even how that's constructed? I mean, I was just the idea that you're scrolling and that it makes it almost like a video game. Like that seems like a lot of formatting and a lot of coding.
It also got me to reflect on that too, because coding's like the big thing now. But I remember buying a HTML for Dummies book, like this thick. And trying to like build my own website way back when, and getting an FTP server and all these different things. But now you don't need all that. Now it's just like click and drag and drop. So for me, just seeing that made me really think about how millennials, in a way, really thought about the design and structures and layout of a website, and really did like the nitty gritty work. Mm-hmm. So I looked at all the names at the end and all the contributors to just making that website or making this article work. I was like, wow, a lot of folks went into doing that. And you don't see that nowadays. You just see the person that wrote the article. So right. It was really cool for me.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool too. And also, what was weird is that the author, I sort of was like, do I know this author? And then he actually wrote a piece from last year that appeared in the highlighter too. And so I was like, there's something going on. And then right up front at the top of the article, he says, okay, I'm also a millennial. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, and he sort of says that he's an older millennial. Yeah. And then he's like a millennial who can sort of talk and speak about all millennial experience. And then when we were chatting just a few minutes ago, you said that you are of a similar age. Mm-hmm. And I guess my question is, did you see yourself at all in this article, or did you not sort of see yourself here?
Oh, yes. I definitely did. I saw myself in the article where it started talking about, the cost of college and just, being in debt. I saw myself in the article where it was talking about, the structures that were in place to really lead to where it is now. Looking back at education and thinking about what education was, the purpose of education was way back in the 1950s, and how we're still perpetuating a lot of the things that kind of lead to societal indifferences. It's something that I'm focusing on now as an administrator, really trying to transform the way that we really support our students and helping them to kind of achieve their goals. They talked about the students getting a college degree. I highlighted it specifically. It talked about getting a college degree is now just like something you check off and say, oh, I got it. Now, a master's is kind of getting to that point now. It's like now you have to like get a PhD, and maybe that's like, hey, you've really made it, I know that when I was getting my master's degree, that was like a really big deal. Now everybody can get a master's degree. You can do it online, So it was really interesting for me to kind of see that that in the article.
Yeah, and the problem though is that everybody is supposed to get a college degree or a master's degree, but then also pay for it.
Yes.
I mean, I remember actually there was a point in my teaching where it shifted. At the beginning, it was go to the best college and don't really care about the money because you're going to be able to pay it off. And then there's something happened where that wasn't the best counseling anymore. Then where you actually had to either get a scholarship or you had to sort of see, you know, how much debt are you going to actually be able to take. And I feel like this guy, this author, is just incredible. He's continued to be incredibly, I think, angry, and for the most part, rightfully so, because he talks to folks of the older generation like his dad, and he just doesn't see that it's possible. Like a home, like owning a home is not totally possible for him. We're in the Bay Area, so we don't necessarily think it's possible for any of us.
Yeah.
But then also this idea of retirement security, and some of the basics. Do you feel like this author was being a little bit too mean-spirited, or do you think that he was sort of just telling the truth?
I think it's kind of in between. I think at the beginning of the article, it talked about how everyone says all millennials are like this one specific thing, and that's not necessarily the truth. I think we all have our different collective experiences, and that lends itself to how we actually go about things in life. I myself grew up in a situation where the money wasn't always pouring in, but my mom made sure that we had a roof over our heads, that we got a good college education, like all those things. She said to me, you worry about school and I'll take care of all the expenses and all those other things. That didn't necessarily mean she was going to pay for it all. She took out loans and all those other things, and which then got transferred to me once I graduated. But her doing and saying those things helped me recognize that like my education like came first, and that like all those things of the loans and money that I would have to pay later on in life, that will take care of itself when I am in the workforce. But what happened, like the article talked about, is that like, you know, our economy is shifting up and down, and where I was at a point when I got out of school, like I couldn't really find a job, and I couldn't find a job with the degree that I had, or with the master's degree that I had. I was a little naive myself, and I came all the way from the East Coast to California thinking, oh, I have a master's degree, I can get any kind of job that I want now, as in terms of being a teacher. And California said, wait a minute, you're coming from another state, you need this license, you need this other specific thing. And it made me think about the specific part in the article where it said that like states started to kind of navigate this like trend of requiring licensure for specific jobs just to prevent lots of people having to apply for that one job, right? You want to be a plumber, now you have to get this license. So maybe you'll reconsider being a plumber now that you have to get this one license. I got to that point at once in my life where I was like, is it really worth being a teacher if I have to go through all these hoops just to be a teacher? Like, I already have all this debt that I have to pay. I'm like, I can go back to working retail just so that I can pay the bills. But I'm like, that's not what I want my life to be. Like, I'm working just to pay bills. I really believe in the education that I got, and I really believe in what it is that I set out to do in kind of changing lives and transforming lives. And, you know, I'll take this temporary position for now, but this is the ultimate goal. But a lot of us as millennials are continuously going through that cycle of like, okay, I'm going to do this for now, but this is the ultimate goal.
Yeah, I picked up on that too. Like, I think that there's this animosity maybe between the generations of, oh, millennials don't suffer enough. Look at what I did coming out of college, and I really worked hard and sacrificed, and you can't expect a job coming out of college. But I do feel like something's happened. The article I thought was really good, where even after you feel you might have some momentum, you don't have momentum. It's like maybe, let's say that you're 30, and and maybe in the previous generation people were married and also they were getting to their first home, for example, whereas that's not necessarily happening anymore. But I still don't quite understand the mutual animosity that's happening. I don't remember, did this used to happen that the older generations used to, I guess it's always been true that the older generation doesn't necessarily like
understand the generation previous to it.
And maybe it's just that, you know, I'm in the middle of things, I suppose, but like I feel like, do you pick up on it more so than, or do you feel like the animosity? I just feel.
Well, I think there is. Going back to your question before about the author, I think he also grew up in a generation where there's lots of distractions, right? Like I mentioned, that there was a comment made about like the website and the layout and how distracting it was, and like that's what millennials need to get them to get through just reading a regular article. I mean, you know, there's an option to like read the normal part of the article by clicking that button. I did it. I was like, it wasn't as flashy and it wasn't as interesting. But yeah, there's video games. We have a lot more things now that are really preventing kids from staying focused. You know, I think about now as administrator, like we have like cell phones and we have tablets and we have all these things that like draw our attention away from the things that maybe adults think matter most, and not necessarily thinking like, let me get down on the same level as the folks that I'm trying to support. What is it that they feel matters the most? How can we encourage them through those specific areas? So I think what the older generation of the boomers don't seem to understand in this article is that, yes, you know, there are all these flashy things that might distract millennials, but there might be some creativity that's there that they never had, because everything that they had was so structured, and like you only did this one thing so that you can go and work in this one specific area. And there's so many options out there. When I was in college, I was like, I want to be an illustrator. And then I was like, ooh, I can take this one class. I can be an animator. Ooh, I can take this other class. I could be a photographer. Like, I don't want to get settled on one thing. And like, that's the only job that I have for the next 30 years of my life, right. Which is something that they talked about in the article, right? Yeah. You go to college and you then get the degree to then work in the area that you'll work for the rest of your life. And like, maybe there's something to that chaos where some folks are like, I want stability. And there's some folks that are like, I like trying new things. And does that mean millennials are lazy? No, it means that we're adventurous. We're okay with trying different things. We're okay with, you know, maybe living like 4 people in one room until we can figure out where it is that we're going to be. Like there is a plan. I think folks have plans. It's just that sometimes the way that we go about doing it doesn't necessarily fit into a box, which is what, you know, the generation prior to us, that's how their lives were. Everything was like, you do this thing, then it leads to this. The world is not that way anymore. It's changing. Yeah. Yeah,
it totally is. It totally is. And I think, though, that at the end of the article, I wish that he would have had more solutions. I was waiting for it. And partly he says, oh, we millennials can do more. But he still seems to think that baby boomers should be doing more. But at this point, baby boomers are getting older. Unfortunately, they continue to run for office, well into their 70s. But there was an interesting thing right there at the end where he's like, oh, we are actually going to be leading the country pretty soon. But I feel like he didn't have enough ideas there at the end. Like he did a great job talking about how horrible the plight of... But then I was like, come on, what's the solution? And...
Maybe speaks to him being a millennial.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but that's
all talk and no solutions.
But that's all going to change really soon.
Yeah, I agree with that. There wasn't necessarily a solution. It didn't also. It wasn't. What's the term? Wasn't necessarily like a growth mindset or like a asset-based mindset. Right? Those are things that are kind of going around these days in terms of like, well, what we have in terms of our skill set and the things that we've kind of learned along the way in our education, we have the opportunity to make these specific changes, right? Run for office. And I saw it in some of the comments. It was like, yeah, run for office. You need to do these things. So I think the people that commented on it, on the article started to talk about solutions, because it can easily go negative, right? It could just be this like shouting match back and forth that never gets to a solution. what I appreciated about the article is that it spoke the truth of a lot of millennials, and it allows for possibility of like dialogue to happen that says, hey, let's move in this direction because we need to figure out how to solve this. We're not going to have Social Security. We're not going to have all these things when we get older. Just like living in the now is not going to work, right? The now generation, as they call the next one.
Yeah. Okay. So we can keep on talking, but at some point, we have to say that the show has to come to end, which is very sad. But I do have one last question, which is, okay, so we have a situation now that, at least in the Bay Area, I would say that the great majority of our students, middle school and high school students, are being taught by millennials. And so you have this idea of a millennial teacher, in general, probably won't be a career teacher for many, many reasons, and yet is also currently teaching young people about sort of how to be. What do you do with all of that? Like, do you think that the state of teaching and learning is different because of that? Or do you think that millennials at this point have an idea of what education means that's different from a prior generation for our young people?
That's a great question. Very deep, too. I never stopped to think about that. Yeah, you have millennials that are teaching kids right now, and with the pervasive problems that we have going on in our society, I can see, specifically with myself and a lot of folks that I work with, that there's a big push for transforming education, right? It starts with education, and once we start to transform the way that we teach our students, the way that students receive information, and how they go about going into the real world, maybe that is the way that we're looking at things, of how they're going to change moving forward. It starts with how students learn. It starts with bridging that achievement gap, because I think a lot of the disproportionate data that we saw in the article also lends itself to, well, how are kids being educated, and how are they being given the equal opportunities to reach that same goal, right? If we say that like the ultimate goal is that everyone should be able to live the life that they want, be able to afford a home, and do all these things, we also have to give them the same type of education that folks who already have that money, maybe passed on from their families or through generations. We have to provide that opportunity for them to actually learn how to actually get that. A lot of kids don't, right? They learn some of the basic things that get them to be able to like get a minimum wage paying job. And I think what most of our country doesn't recognize is that education is one of the ways that will help free us of some of that burden. Getting kids to be part of the political system, helping them kind of transform that if we don't like the way things are right now. But they have to understand the things that came before that, and then understand what's going on now in the political climate. So I think we're very in tune as educators, or as millennials as educators, to what's going on in our society and the things that we know that we want to see change, that we're at an opportunity to help teach and engage our students to make sure that they can get there if we don't.
Thanks, Omar.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate this time. Love the highlighter. If you don't already subscribe, go ahead and do that. And then also, I'm just going to go ahead and plug this, but there's also the podcast. The podcast is really easily downloaded. If you just go to iTunes, look up the highlighter, just type it in, the highlighter, and it'll pop up. And then you can subscribe. I did it myself the other day, and it's so cool. I could do it right from my phone. Just plug in my headphones, and I'm good.
We'll bring you back every week, Omar.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. A big thanks yet again to Omar for being on the show. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about yourself and also your philosophy about art as well as education. Once again, everybody, thank you so much for listening. This has been yet another wonderful episode of the Highlighter Podcast. Hope you've enjoyed. If you have any comments, positive or constructive, please email me at mark@highlighter.cc. You can also subscribe on iTunes and leave a review over there. And please look out for the next issue of the Highlighter coming out this Thursday at 9:10 a.m. It's going to be issue number 125, which I'm pretty excited about. And there's like 20 or 30 new subscribers, so it's going to be great to welcome them too. Have a great week, everybody, and I'll see you soon.